Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course. If you're joining us here in the auditorium, please be seated wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you all again. Like they say in Texas, you know, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. Now it's a hot day, right? In the middle of winter. So it's a great gift to us today. So we're going to be, if you're joining us online, we are in the Building Moral Excellence unit of the Peaceful Solution. If you're on the Facebook page, you can go up to the drop-down menu. There's about, this is, what's this, number 6? Book number 6? Am I right? On the menu. We went through the 5 intermediate books, and now we're in the character unit of the high school series, is what it's called. It's called the Building Moral Excellence. So go ahead and download it. Feel free to download it. And the only thing we ask, as Chris always reminds us, is, you know, don't change the content of what you're teaching. You know, go ahead and download it and teach it. But for the best effectiveness of the program, follow the lesson plans with your students and you'll get the best results. So we are we're talking about leadership. I'll be picking up where David left off in chapter 4, leadership in your character. We're on the skills of leadership. We're going to be wrapping that up is what that's our goal for tonight, is to wrap up this portion about skills of leadership found on page 158. If you'd go ahead and turn over there, that would be a great starting point. I just want to briefly skim over and remind us of the skills of leadership that I believe Catan and David both, and Chris might have even been in that section. I don't really remember, but if he was, Catan, Chris, and David covered the skills of leadership. And the first skill we learn on page 158 about leadership, and remember about leadership, what we're learning in this Building Moral Excellence, is really an eye-opener to me, because I never thought about learning to lead ourselves first, you know, and that's what we were learning throughout this whole certification course, was self-leadership, because we can't lead others if we can't lead ourselves. And when I say lead yourself, I'm not talking about, you know, with the GPS or something like that. I'm talking about moral character leadership, you know, making the right decisions, leading ourselves to make right choices, use self-control in every decision, not to act impulsively, etc. To learn all the valuable positive moral character traits so we can lead ourselves and in turn lead others, even as we're leading ourselves. And none of us are perfect leaders, you know, as you'll always hear us tell you, none of us are perfect at practicing the peaceful solution. But what makes us perfect is the practice. And I would say no one's you know, we always teach in the peaceful solution, you're not a failure if you fall. If you make a mistake or you make a bad choice, you only fail if you don't get back up and keep going, okay? But we have no failures in the peaceful solution. All you have to do is, if you make the wrong decision, you make a mistake, you get up, dust yourself off, and you keep on trucking, okay? And that's the mark of a man that has a perfect moral character, because they continue and they strive to come to that perfection. All right, so the skills of leadership on page 158, we learned about one of those skills is communicating effectively. And as we learn in the Peaceful Solution, communication is more than words, right? You remember all the different, and we even learned about this in the intermediate series about communication and how we communicate not only through words. I think words is only 8% of our communication. Most communication is done through our body language, our tone of voice, our facial expressions. Remember all those things that we learn. Words are only 8% of communication. That's 7 or 8. I think it's 7, actually. And so that means that people are looking more at how we look, how we say it than what we're saying, I guess you might say. Okay, so communicating effectively talks about tone of voice. The first subsection there on page 158, your tone of voice, your facial expressions. We learn about body language, the different stances. And I think David was going over that a little bit about, because it was kind of funny. I remember like it was yesterday, because I was sitting right in front of David when he gave this class, and I had my arms crossed when he was talking. But I had them crossed because I was cold, right? And I'm glad he mentioned that, because it was kind of like I wasn't trying to be defiant and, rebellious against David or anything. I was cold. So we can't always look at things and think that that person's not interested because they're leaning back. Well, maybe their back hurts. Maybe there's some other issues going on. So we can't judge by appearance, okay? But generally speaking, if a teen, especially a teen, has their arms crossed when they're looking at you and they're just kind of tapping their feet and looking at the clock, well, they're not really interested in what you have to say. So it's kind of generally speaking. Also the body language. And then on page 160, another form of communication, believe it or not, is listening. Because when we think of communication, we normally think about speaking, okay? We don't ever think about listening. And I think it was it David? I think it was David that said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should hear a lot less than we speak, or hear a lot more than we speak, I mean. So actively, we learned about listening, and we also learned about the skill of active listening. And if you remember, it says another important aspect of communication is, believe it or not, listening. Communication generally involves 3 main components, of which listening plays an essential role. First, there's the giving of information, which is usually done by speaking, and then there's the receiving of information. And that's the listening component. And then it says that then finally there's a response based on how the information was heard and interpreted. Okay, now that's important too, because, not everyone hears things. Like after this class, I could go out and I could talk to everybody here and ask them a question about something I said, and they'd probably give me as many answers or different answers than the other person. They might have perceived something that I said completely different than what the next person did. Okay, so remember, not everyone hears the same way. It just depends on their upbringing, depends on their circumstances, depends on if there might be some things even going through their mind while you're speaking, and they're not really hearing what you have to say. They're thinking more about the problem they're going to have when they get home tonight, because their child's being unruly or whatever, Could be some kind of issue going on with them, so their mind isn't really all there, at the time. But there's many, many reasons people hear things differently. Another thing could be a language barrier itself. Some people, they speak English, but they don't really understand English very well, even though they might be able to speak it. So I don't remember if it was Chris or Catan, but, stressing the importance of making sure that when you I think it was David, giving an instruction, when you give an instruction, you should always ask the person you gave the instruction to after you give it, now, can you repeat back to me what I just told you? So that way that what you conveyed to them was received properly and it was interpreted properly, right? Because a lot of times, you all know as well as I do that when you tell somebody something and you say, did you understand that? They'll go, oh, yeah. But then when you ask them, well, what did I just say? They can't repeat it. They'll say they understood, but they didn't really hear what you said. But they don't want to feel stupid, or they don't want to embarrass you by, telling you, hey, I wasn't even listening to what you had to say. But people will do that. They'll tell you they heard it, but they didn't really hear what you said. So you need to make sure, have them repeat it back. That way you're sure and you don't have any kind of communication failure. So then we have how active listening actually helps. You see those bullet points. It helps de-escalation of arguments, imparting understanding and acceptance, and gaining insight and knowledge of an individual or situation. So, asking the questions, getting the information, listening, you have to also know when you're listening the intent behind what they're saying. A lot of times people beat around the bush. They don't really tell you what they really want to tell you. And so that's where the active listening comes in. You're not just listening with your ears, you're listening with your heart, you're watching their body language, you're listening to their tone of voice, you're using empathy, you're putting yourself in their situation and thinking, okay, well, how would I feel if I was in their shoes and trying to convey this? What are they really saying to me? What are they really trying to tell me? Because a lot of times they won't just tell you right out. So you got to develop that skill. It's a great skill. And then it talks about have the right attitude about listening, and that number 1 there. Number 2, encourage others to talk by using door openers, and then don't interrupt the speaker or change the subject. And then reflect what the speaker might be feeling. Remember, a reflective response conveys understanding and concern for what the speaker's feeling. Like saying something like, when they say, I'm never going to get all this work done, a reflective response would be, it sounds like you're overwhelmed with all the work you have to do. Okay? All you did is reflect back to them like a mirror what you heard them say. That helps them to see, hey, that guy just listened to what I said. He understood what I said. So they're going to be more likely to continue to converse with you because you're listening to them. They see that you're actually listening. And that's what people want. They want someone to listen to them. And listening is a valuable skill that will only enhance your ability to lead. You'll become a great leader if you become a great listener, okay, is what it's telling us. And then we also learned about taking initiative. That's the next one on page 161. We learned about on page 162, we went over mediation, being a mediator, that a positive leader is able to mediate or find a middle ground in conflict situations. And that's important to remember, too, that as peaceful solution teachers and students, we don't take sides in conflicts. We don't take a side, We don't say, well, I'm on the Republican side or I'm on the Democrat side. What we do is we try to bring both sides together. We don't subscribe to either. We don't. It's kind of like taking a dog by the ears. You ever done that? Take a dog by the ears and have that dog in your face, and he's like, oh, bites you right in your nose, right? You don't do that. A mediator, they don't take sides. What they try to do is get both sides to agree to they show what the peaceful solution says, and they try to get both sides to agree to the peaceful solution using it so they can resolve whatever issue they have. Okay, so, because I know I used to work in a court. The peaceful solution, actually, we had the honor of working in one of the courts down in Laredo in a court program there, and they had a mediator. They called it a mediator for divorce proceedings. They had this mediator, and it was the wrong idea of mediation. It was normally they took the side of the woman. The woman was always right, the guy was always wrong. And it was slanted more toward the woman in the divorce court, and the man was kind of raked over the coals for the most part. So it's kind of like Judge Judy. You walk out, they walk out after the court decision that Judge Judy made, or Judge Wapner, and one person's really upset, the other one's like really glad, But that's not justice. I remember the author of The Peaceful Solution saying, if one person came out of that courtroom upset, justice was not done. Because true justice would be that both parties come out feeling like a winner. Okay? That would be true justice, because, even in, remember, you want everyone to win. You want everyone to develop a positive moral character, even the person that is in the wrong. Okay? So It's not about going to court and the judge says, okay, pay $20 at the window for that, or $200 at the window for that speeding ticket. You know, is there any instruction there other than go to the window and pay? I mean, what did I gain from that to where I might not speed anymore? I might be a little more careful about. I might get one of those what do they call those things you put on your dashboard to make sure no cops are coming. You know, so you can go 100 miles an hour, right, or something. Is that the way to handle it? No, it would be better if, like some courts in Laredo that we worked with, they would have us come in and teach this program to speeders or to people that stole from the store. And so they would get instruction where they could get the tools to learn how to stop doing those things. That's true justice, okay? True justice is they walk out of that court feeling like, you know what? I learned something. And I feel like I'm a better person for it, even though I might be out a little money or I might have to pay restitution or whatever. I gained something from it, and not only that, my victim gained something from it because he got paid back, right? So everybody's a winner. That's the way it should be. But you know, sad to say, we're not there yet. But so on page 162, we also learned about prioritizing, which is a positive leader has to be able to rank things in the order of importance. You know, I had a situation yesterday where I had to tell a group of men that, well, I had to hold off on something for, you know, a couple of weeks before I brought it because I had some other things that I thought were more important than that at the time. So it wasn't that I wasn't going to get to it, and I did get to it, but it's just that it wasn't a priority. I thought other things might be a little more important at the time, and that's a judgment I made. But that's a skill we all have to learn to develop, is what's the most important thing to do first? And remember, I think it was Catan that talked about, no, it was David, where he talked about, you know, what would be the priority of school safety or school lunches, you know, or school desserts, you know, what would be well, I know with most children, a priority would be the dessert, right? But with parents, what would the priority be? It'd be school safety, right? It wouldn't be desserts, you know? So again, it depends on who you're asking and how old they are, you know, because remember, when you were 5 or when you were 10, were your values the same? Did you value the same things? No. Then we learned that a true leader knows how to delegate on page 162 at the bottom, that leaders are able to delegate or assign tasks and duties. And then we learned, David made it to the summary on page 163, and that's where I'm going to pick up now, beginning now. So let's look at the summary. Let's go ahead and put up that first visual for everybody that's watching. Now, on page 163, in summary, it says the skills of leadership are important, and only with practice will you become competent and proficient at utilizing them at will. Try to incorporate as many of them as you can into your daily interactions. Evaluate your leadership style in terms of how these skills can improve your ability to lead. Keep in mind that the end result of positive, effective leadership is productivity, you know, productivity, like you're making some kind of progress, right? And I think Catan likes to use that word, development, you know. You need to, you know, you see some kind of development or some kind of progress or increase in your ability to lead, your improvement in your behavioral skills, etc., your communication skills, all the skills we're learning in the Peaceful Solution. We should be going forward. We shouldn't be stagnant or going home and watching TV all night, propping our feet up, wasting valuable time. Vegetating, I guess they used to call it when I was growing up. Vegetating in front of that one-eyed monster, right? And I know a lot of people say, well, that's old days, you know, they don't even watch TV anymore. Well, yeah, they do. They got those little boxes, right, called smartphones. Everybody's got, or a tablet or something, you know, they're walking around with. And they're usually scrolling, you know, one video after another, one to the next. And it's quite addictive. It's very addictive. The way they've done this now, and even on Facebook now, I notice, they have the reels, Facebook reels, where it's kind of like TikTok, where you just scroll, one video after the next. And they got your algorithm. They know exactly what you want to watch. They know if you watch that, what are those, Komodo dragon? If you like to watch Komodo dragons swallow antelopes whole, every other one's going to be a Komodo dragon, right? And you're like, how do they know I like all this kind of stuff? Well, because they know, they're familiar with your habits, your weaknesses. They know it all. How? Because you showed them, right? Showed them. And a lot of people sit there and scratch their head and they go, like, I was just talking about that product the other day, and or just 5 minutes ago, and now it's popping up on my Facebook page or, the TikTok or whatever. It's like, yeah, because someone's always listening and watching what you desire, and they're going to give you what you desire. But it's a waste of time. It really is. And Chris will tell you it rots your brain. Okay, and that's a fact. It does rot your brain. It's a waste of time. So let's try to stay away from those kind of things. And like I said, move forward, not backward. Okay, so back to the reading here. It says, keep in mind that the end result of positive, effective leadership is productivity. That is, will your style of leadership produce positive or negative results? Will those who look to you for guidance be inspired by your leadership? Well, inspired to do what? Hopefully inspired to do the right thing, right? Because remember, how many types of leadership is there? 2, right? There's always, the one or the other, the right or the left, the dark and the light, the polar opposites. There's always the other. So, yes, you can be a leader and you can inspire others through your leadership, but you got to make sure that what we're inspiring them with is the right inspiration, the inspiration that comes from the peaceful solution character, the positive moral inspiration. Says, will they want to emulate you? That word emulate, it means to imitate or mimic. Okay, will they want to copy you? Will they want to be like you? Are you a great representation of what, and hopefully if they're wanting to copy us for the right reasons, right? They're wanting to emulate us, to be like us for all the right reasons, not because, they like our impeccable style of suits, like, what's that guy, John Gotti, that we learned about? They don't think we're cool because, we're a gangster, or, because, hey, I really like that teacher because he shows me lots of TikTok videos on his phone, man. He's a pretty cool guy. I like that guy, and that, I'm just telling you, that's kind of how it is in the schools out there. A lot of teachers, they try to gain the students' friendship, but they do it in the wrong way. You shouldn't become like them to be their friend. You should try to win them over to the peaceful solution, not use some kind of negative behavior to win them over to you. Okay, that's not what you should do. Okay, let's go back to that visual, and then we'll see. It says, will they feel comfortable during or sharing ideas and making suggestions? By maintaining your character and communicating effectively, taking the initiative, prioritizing, and delegating, you will be able to answer yes to all of the above questions. So remember, we're summarizing here what we've just learned about the skills of leadership, okay, that I just went over. We're summarizing it. So let's go to the next slide. Now, at the bottom of page 163, there's what's called the leadership equation. And not one of you out here in this audience tonight told me, hey, aren't we going to go over the purpose and objective of the lesson before you start? Gotcha. No, I forgot. But I could just play it off. I could blame it on you guys. I could scapegoat y'all, right? And say, yeah, it's your guys' fault. Nobody told me. But let's go back to the purpose and objective of the lesson before we proceed any further. I got to correct myself here. So we're on since we started on page 163, let's go back to LP. Let's see, LP 4G, and let's look at step number 7. Am I right? Okay. Step 7. Let's read that and make the correction, and we'll go back to where we were. Okay, it says, explain that being a positive leader is responsibility that should not be confused with bullying or oppression. Have students turn to page 164. No, that's not it, you guys. Come on, you did that to me. We're not on 164 yet. We're getting there. Remember, I only made it to the leadership equation. Got you again. No, you got me that time. Okay, so we actually should be reading step 6 first, I think, right? 5? Wow, I'm really off. You sure? Yeah, skills of leadership. That's what we're summarizing, right? Okay, you got it. That's right. Great catch. Okay, so let's look at 5, okay? Explain to students that they will now focus on learning the skills of a positive, effective leader. Tell students that a skill is something that they have learned and have become proficient in. Ask students to share some of the things that they've been skillful in doing. And then it says answers will vary, but could include cooking, sewing, driving, typing, sports, video watching. No, it's not in there, but conclude the discussion by telling students that they acquired these skills through experience and practice. Stress that in order to acquire the skills of leadership, they will also have to practice them until they become proficient. And I didn't have a definition of the word proficient, but if I had to sum it up, it would just simply be you become like a professional at it. You become very skilled in what you do, okay? And it becomes like first nature to you. Have students turn to page 158 in their handbooks to the section entitled Skills of Leadership and choose students to read about each skill and discuss how each skill enhances one's ability to lead. Allow time for students to complete the exercises as they relate to each section or assign the exercises for homework. Okay, so now let's go over to page 163, and I'll just finish that one little quote right there. Let's put up that slide. Now, let's look at the leadership equation, summing all this up. The leadership equation is character. What is character? Character is what? Your innards or your outards? Likes and dislikes? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're going to have to go back and start all over again. Okay, your character, remember, is who you are on the inside. Remember that? Your character? It's the choices that we make. It's our behavior. It's the way we behave in situations. It's the moral choices that we make, or our immoral choices, right? Yeah, positive and negative. We have positive or negative character, and we went over all those things. So it's character is part of leadership because your character has everything to do with what kind of leader you're going to become. Your personality says character plus personality. Remember, personality is our likes and dislikes, our social skills, etc. Plus your skills, which all these we went over here, we just summarized, equals leadership. Okay, that's what true leadership is. It's not how tall you are, It's not how smart you are, anything like that. It's putting these types of moral character traits and these principles we're learning here into practice. That's what makes a great leader, okay? So, and no one's born a leader. Remember, we learned you're not born with these skills. None of us are. We have to develop these skills, but you got to learn them too first. You got to get the right information to become a great leader, because without the peaceful solution, you're not going to become the proficient, morally educated leader that you need to be. Now, you could still be, we saw some leaders. Remember when we were going over the examples of positive and negative leaders? We saw some that did positive things, right? And some of them were positive leaders, but they could have been better leaders if they would have had the peaceful solution available to them. They could have only enhanced their ability to lead in a positive way. All right, so now let's go back to LP 4F, and let's read activity 6, right? Is that where we're going to be now? I think so. It says, not just words. The following activity will enable students to appreciate the importance of effective communication. Using instructions based in the box below, choose volunteers to come forward and demonstrate the directions assigned. After each demonstration, ask the class, A, did the facial expressions match some of the tone of voice and what you said? You remember David did the thing about all right, so I think one of the ones we used to use was, my puppy died. Does that match? If your puppy died, would you be smiling and joyous? No, you'd be sad and sullen and downcast, right? You wouldn't be smiling. It doesn't match. So people oftentimes, they'll say, when you ask them how you doing, you'll hear that, I'm all right. Well, that kind of tells you, no, they're not all right. There's something going on. Okay, so remember, the communication, the facial expressions, the tone of voice, etc., has to match the words. Okay. And then it says, which form of communication was more effective? The words that were said or the facial expression, right? Well, it's always going to be the facial expression, not necessarily the words, because remember what communication is. It's not just words. It's facial expressions, tone of voice, etc. That's why I don't like texting people. It's convenient, but it sometimes causes a lot of problems, and people take things wrong. There's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of people get upset because they think you're saying something, and like David said, you got to use the emojis now to make sure they understand, hey, I'm not really serious about this, or whatever, and some people like to use capital letters when they're angry, everything's in caps and with exclamation points. And sometimes they're not angry when they do that. They just forgot to turn off the cap lock, but you're like, man, they look like they're mad because all their words are capitalized, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case, but people take things wrong, through these devices because they don't see your facial expressions. They don't hear your tone of voice. They don't see your body language. They don't see anything other than writing. So a lot of times things are taken wrong, okay? They can be taken wrong. Okay, and then it says, emphasize that our facial expressions validate our words. When the two are conflicting, facial expressions are more likely to be believed. And then in the box here, it says, with a frown on your face, say, that was the best meal I've ever eaten. Now, well, what are you going to believe? The words or how you look? Stomp your feet and frown and say, I'm not angry. Wait, I forgot to stomp my feet. Number 3, with a look of terror, yell to the class. With a look of terror, yell to the class, watch out for that car. With your head bowed and in a sad voice say, I feel great. So which one would you believe? Of course, you're going to believe you're going to go with the body language, the facial expressions, etc. Remember, words are a very, very small part of communication. Just don't forget that. And then don't forget about the listening component. Very important. Stress that becoming a leader is a process that combines character, personality, and skills, which we just went over, that leadership equation, with motivation, opportunity, and practice. Anyone can learn how to become an effective leader. And it doesn't matter how old you are either. You can be a 5-year-old and become proficient at doing this. And I've seen them do it. Okay, so now we're going to jump into number 7. Let's go to LP. We should already be on LP4G. Number 7 now. It says, explain that being a positive leader is a responsibility that should not be confused with bullying or oppression. Have students turn to page 164 in their handbooks and read the section entitled, What Leadership is Not. These scenarios can be role-played for greater classroom interaction. And that's always fun, to role-play stuff. I remember going out with Jeff Heimerman, Catan. They used to do some of the funniest skits I've ever seen. And Catan really used to do a lot of acrobatic stuff that used to just have me rolling, okay? And I know all these students in our that we used to go out and teach in the schools, they just loved their acting abilities, the role playing that they would do. And sometimes they actually thought things were taking place. It looked so real, the way they would do it. But kudos to Jeff and Catan, because they used to do such an awesome job at putting skits together for the students that really enjoy that kind of stuff. So if you can incorporate it, you should. Don't ask me to do cartwheels like Catan can do. I don't know if you ever saw that video, but Catan can do some cartwheels, okay? He must have been in the circus at one time or something. Huh? I mean, the way he was doing them, he was just like, man, it was just like so amazing. And he did it across a whole stage. It was kind of a mock. It was so funny because it was a mock. David was teaching. It was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And there was a big stage at Central High School, I think it was, in Little Rock. And it was a big stage. And David was teaching a class on respect and responding to disrespect. And, he's all serious and he's teaching the students and everything. And all of a sudden, Catan comes out on the stage and starts doing cartwheels in the middle of David's class on the stage. And David's like, what are you doing? I'm supposed to be teaching a class. What are you doing? Like it's very disrespectful what you're doing right now, right? And they would role play stuff like that. And it was just really hilarious. It was really great. And the students really get a kick out of stuff like that. So if you can incorporate those kind of things, you should. You should make learning fun if it's possible. There's a time for the fun stuff and there's a time for the seriousness. So, okay, so it says, I'm on step 7. It says these scenarios can be role played for greater classroom interaction. Have students complete the exercise entitled Applying Leadership to Everyday Situations, found on page 165 and 167. Man, I should have brought that video so you guys could see it. Catan is such a great acrobat. Catan, if you're listening, next time you teach class, I want you to get up here and do one of those for these guys. He's also a really great singer, too. He's a really great singer, too. He's got our teachers, not me. I'm not talking about me. These teachers have some pretty great skills, that they try to hide. They don't tell you all their skills. Okay, but I know them. I've seen them do them. They're just holding back because they don't want to, show it off. Okay, so it says applying leadership to everyday situations, found on page 165-67, and discuss their answer as a class and emphasize that leadership plays an important role in everyday situations. So let's turn now over to page 165, right? 60. Let's see, 164, sorry. And we're going to talk about what leadership is not. All right, so let's go ahead and put up the next visual for everyone here. What leadership is not. Okay, it says leadership means taking responsibility for yourself, others, and the tasks or goals that must be collectively accomplished. However, even with the very best intentions, leaders can still make mistakes, and even the very best leaders sometimes find themselves walking a thin line between what they should and should not do. The following list can help you avoid some of the common pitfalls of leadership. Okay, and we're going to go over this list of what leadership is not. Okay, well, we saw the contrast. We saw what leadership actually is. Now we got to show the other side of the coin, and that's the beautiful thing about the Peaceful Solution is we teach both sides of the coin so you can see the full spectrum, right? And you can see, you know, the rewards and consequences of doing the right thing, and you can see the consequences that come from making the wrong decisions, so you can make an informed choice in every situation. Remember, you cannot make a perfect decision without all the information, without all the facts, and they have to be true facts to make a perfect decision. So, all right, so let's go to the next visual, and let's look at number one, what leadership is not. Now it says leaders should never be bullies. Having to use force by treating someone abusively to accomplish a task is bullying, not leading. Now, let me ask you a question just to test your skills here. If I ask a child to do dishes, am I bullying him? Well, it depends. It depends, right? What if I'm getting in his face and I'm putting my finger in his face and I'm saying, do those dishes, boy? Right? Am I bullying him? Yeah, that's bullying. Okay, we can bully people. I mean, even though we can say, well, you know, children should do their chores. Well, they should, but we shouldn't bully them into doing them. In other words, we should teach them to be responsible, that chores are important. They need to learn to do chores, but we don't want to use some kind of brute tactics and brute force to get them to do it, right? We should teach them to do it. Number one, that should be the most important thing, is teaching them how to do it, how we want it done, etc. But it's not bullying to ask somebody to do what their job is, you know, to fulfill their obligations, but not using force to do that, not being abusive in doing it. So having to use force by treating someone abusively to accomplish a task is bullying, not leading. Leaders encourage and motivate through positive, respectful, meaningful communication. It's not meaningful communication if you're cursing, name-calling, belittling, etc., right? Name-calling should be completely out of the picture because that's disrespect. Remember, that's just a form of disrespect. We're showing that person that we don't value them as a human being and that they're not worthy of respect when we do that. So we don't want to be name-calling. We don't want to be teasing. We don't want to be pushy in being abusive in that way, whether with our words or with our hands or anything else. So leaders should never be bullies, and, you know, but they are. They can be. But remember, the reason they are is because they probably learned it somewhere else, right? They probably saw that, well, you know, it's more effective when you push people around to get your job done, you know, because they won't do it if you don't push them around to do it. Some people think that way. Some people think that, well, if I don't do it, as we're going to see here in a little bit, the one-man show type thing, if I don't do the job, it's not going to get done right, because all these peasants here, they just can't do anything right. Plebs, or whatever they called them in Rome. Okay, so let's look at the next. So leadership is not bullying, okay? We should not be bullies. The second one, leadership is not, is leaders should never use their position to bring others down. It says, a leader must never put a person down if they fail to achieve what they've been asked to do. Now, does that mean you shouldn't sit down and instruct them? Ask them, you know, like, where did you go right? Where did you go wrong? What's your plan on fixing it? Shouldn't you do that? Of course. But you don't put them down if they fail, like to achieve a certain thing that you've asked them to do. You don't put them down. You don't mock them and ridicule them, things like that. But you can sit down with them and you can say, look, so okay, so you didn't get it done. So what did you learn from it? Like, okay, so, and what are we going to do to change to get a better outcome next time, right? That's something we should do. That's what a positive leader should do, and encourage that person to try again, or assign a different task to that person would be better, that they might be better suited for. That would be a better way of handling it. Because a lot of times you hear, I remember, what was that, The Apprentice? You're fired. I mean, you know what? When you say you're fired, you just said that you're a failure. Did you realize that? When you tell somebody you're fired, what you just said was you didn't have the ability to teach that person. Because it says, don't fire them. Give them something else to do. If they're not proficient in that, or if you see that, if you have the foresight to see, or the insight or the foresight, like David talked about, to see that that person's not suited for that particular thing, well, they might be better suited over here. And I remember, as I said, there's many people in the world that practice the peaceful solution in little ways that they don't even know they're practicing it. But I had a boss. I don't even want to call him a boss. I had an employer. I don't like that word boss. Boss is, it's the connotations are, I don't like it. But I had an employer in Houston, Texas, that my back went bad. I was working in doing delivery in a DME company, durable medical equipment. I used to deliver hospital beds and oxygen and all those kind of things to patients. And I worked in a warehouse, and my back started going bad, and I couldn't lift anymore. And my boss, I had absolutely zero experience with what he asked me to do. He said, you're really great with numbers, is what he told me. He goes, I would like to put you in the billing department and see how you do there. And I was like, billing department? The billing department was like all the girls, all the ladies, like sitting around billing Medicare, Medicaid, all these different insurance companies, and I'm like, I don't fit in there. But somehow this guy knew that I would, right? He said, look, I value you as an employee. I don't want to lose you. He could have told me, hey, look, your back's bad. I'm not going to, you're a risk. You might end up getting, some kind of insurance claim on me, or something. He didn't do that. He put me to work in another department. And, when I got to that department, the girls all looked at me like, what are you doing here, boy? And you know what they had me do? Filing. They had stacks of, because nobody likes to file in an office. Nobody wants to do the filing. That's below them, They're above that. They just throw that file in the basket and walk off, and, after they're done using it. Because the plebs do stuff like that, And so I got stuck with filing. But you know what? That was the greatest opportunity I was ever given. You know why? Because I had to learn how to put papers in files and file like in insurance claims and billing Medicare and Medicaid and all that. You have to do everything by dates. You have to do everything according to ICD-9 codes, all these other things. And I learned how to do that. And I learned how to put those files together. And I learned how to read those files. And within 1 year of filing, I was able to go and open my own consulting business to teach other businesses how to do Medicare billing. From that opportunity I was given. I kept working for him, but I also did freelance stuff where I was doing quite well teaching other companies how to bill. I learned that billing just by filing, but I started with the filing. Then I went to the computer, then I started learning how to bill and et cetera. But you had to learn all those codes and everything first. And that was the perfect opportunity. And I'll never forget that man gave me that opportunity. I mean, and I would have never thought it would have turned out that way just from filing. Because nobody wants to file. Like, that's like the worst thing. Because the women already know how to do those things. And they're too busy doing, what they do, billing insurance companies. So, like I said, that person might not be suited for a certain position, but you should value that person enough to find another spot for him, not fire him. Firing's that's like that guy that said, remember Israel Hawkins talked about the man that said nobody gets an A in my class. That teacher that said nobody gets an A in my class. Well, what are you saying? That you're not able to teach them well enough to get an A? You should want your students to succeed. In this book right here, all the answers are in the book. Did you notice that? All the answers. We don't try to hide the answers. Well, we don't got to give those students the answers, They might cheat. No, we want you to look at the answers. We want you to have the answers. Because we want you to be the best you can be. We don't want to hide that knowledge from you. We want you to succeed. So that's what true leaders do. So leadership should never be use their position to bring others down. So let's go to the next one. Leaders should never use their followers as scapegoats. Okay, now, if you know what a scapegoat is in the old days, they used to take a goat and release it. They'd put all their sins of everybody on that goat, and symbolically, and they would release it into the wilderness, right, to get the sins off of them, right? Well, some people, leaders, blame their followers for the choices that they make, okay? And that's what it's saying we shouldn't do. We shouldn't be placing blame on the people that we're leading, okay? It's those people that you gave me to lead that made me do it, right? Leaders are accountable for their own actions and should never blame someone else for their mistakes, And I have to catch myself if I start saying, like if somebody says, if I make a mistake as a leader and I start saying, well, I have to, sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, no, don't say that. You can't blame anybody else, okay? You got to take responsibility on your own for the choices that are made. And that's what positive leaders do. They don't try to pin the blame on, what do they call that, pin the tail on the donkey? Used to play. Pin the tail on the donkey or whatever, try to place the blame on others. No, just be accountable. Remember, being accountable is being responsible. It's part of the responsibility. So it's okay. And you know what? It's going to be more, you're going to gain more trust from people when you admit mistakes than you are if you try to hide them, because people aren't stupid. They know you made that choice, and they know who's really to blame. They're just wanting you to admit it. So if they see you're going to be honest about it, they're going to be more likely to put their confidence and trust in you, because everybody should know that leaders even make poor choices sometimes. Leaders make mistakes. But remember what I told you about making mistakes. When you do so, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you determine not to do that again. You set your mind in advance, as we learned on page 85 of the character unit. Set your mind in advance not to do that again. Okay, so let's look at the next point of what leadership is not. Leaders should never be a one-man, one-woman show. Being a leader does not mean doing it all yourself or making all the decisions. Keep in mind that without followers, there would be no one to lead. That's really something that's really a profound statement right there. Like without followers, without people to guide, you wouldn't even need a leader, right? So we should be thankful as leaders, if we're a leader, that we have followers. It's kind of like a class, like right now. Okay, so you could consider me the leader of the class right now, but without an audience, I'd just be bumping my gums up here, right? I'd be talking to the microbes, and they might listen too. But what I'm saying is, it's more productive when you can convey this information to people that can take that information, digest it, and then use it in their daily interactions, and cut down on the amount of crime and the amount of violence and the de-escalation of all the situations that lead to really bad things, and make a difference with people. It's better. But anyway, we got to be thankful for the students that we have too, because the students play a role, because the students are actually you know, they're helping me, they're helping the teacher because it's helping me hopefully become better at teaching because I'm trying to convey things to those students. But if the students aren't there giving me feedback, showing me that they understand what is being presented to them, etc., it's a two-way street, you know, with the teacher and the student. One is not above the other. It's not like that. We don't look at it like that in the peaceful solution. In fact, I guarantee you, if I put any of you up here right now to teach a section of this lesson, I would gain knowledge from you that I don't have. I would gain some kind of knowledge or some kind of great example that I would be able to use later that I didn't know until I heard it from you. And it would, everybody in here could do that. I would learn, because I do learn that things from people. All of you guys. I've had interactions with all of you, and I've learned things from you just having conversations with you. I might not tell you, hey, man, can I use that? You have a copyright on that? You know, because some of the things I hear are quite profound. I'm like, man, this guy's like some kind of Socrates or something. You know? No, you're just a peaceful solutions student. You're smart. That's why you come here, right? You come here because you're smart enough to know that in order to have a well-rounded education, even if you have a PhD, a master's, or whatever you have, it's not complete without this. You got to have moral character education, right, to top it all off, okay? So, being a one-man, do-it-all-yourself, making all the decisions is not the right way. It says, put that visual back up, please. It says, keep in mind that without followers, there would not be one, or there would be no one to lead. An effective leader utilizes the skills and knowledge of those he's in charge of to bring about the best possible results. Okay? All right. And then in our waning moments here, we got about 4 minutes. I think we got this clock. Is it 6:26 or is it a different time? Is that right? Okay. Okay. All right. So we got a couple minutes. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at this last point of what leaders should not do, or what leadership is not. No, wait. Go back to that last one. Is that the? Okay, we did that. Okay, go to the next one. That should be the last one. Okay. Leaders should never break their word. Now, this is really important. I mean, not that the other ones weren't, but this is really, really, we really need to underline that. Leaders should never break their word. Leaders should make sure that they can fulfill their promises. Oh, wait a minute. What's the difference between, I thought it said we should keep our word. It doesn't say anything about promises, does it? Well, it is a promise. When you give your word, that's a promise. Okay, so we should keep our word. If we're not sure, you know, if it's election season and we're just trying to get votes, right? You might want to think twice, because remember, people remember 4 years later too. Remember, read my lips, no new taxes. And if you think people forgot that 4 years later, they did not. And that cost somebody an election. That cost a man an election. He promised no new taxes, read my lips. And he raised taxes, and 4 years later, he was out the door because people remembered that statement. So if you think that people don't remember things we say, think again. It says, leaders should make sure they can fulfill their promises. Remember, don't let your mouth write checks that your legs can't cash. Right? That's what we used to say in the old days. You know, I think we said a little something else about some other body parts. But anyway, if you're not sure, you should not promise or give your word. Same thing. Otherwise, people will lose trust in you. Okay? And especially a peaceful solution teacher. Especially a peaceful solution student. Because people look up to you. Whether you believe it or not, they look up to you. They look up to you for guidance. They're watching the decisions we make to see, okay, what they're going to do in that situation. And if we don't make the right decision, it's a letdown for them. You know, a lot of people, they're not looking to point the finger at you when you make a mistake. They're disappointed because, wait, I thought, he would do this because that's what he teaches, right? So they get disappointed. It's and because you're the light, you're the hope of that person. So you should always remember these what leadership is not. Remember, in summary, leaders should never be bullies. Leaders should never use their positions to bring others down. Leaders should never use their followers as scapegoats. Leaders should never be one man, one woman shows. And leaders should never break their word. And I don't think... Great. Okay, so we're going to leave off there on I just finished page 164. The next teacher, who should be Catan, will be picking up on page 165. Should be Catan next class. Next class will be on February 5th, 2025, right here, same time, same channel, 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next class. Great job, everyone.